Morning. Go ahead and call to order the August 14, 2018 regular meeting of the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners. At this time, it's my pleasure to invite Father Robert Stull with the Christ Church of Vero Beach up to the podium for the invocation. That'll be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by myself. And first, we'll start with a moment of silent reflection for our first responders. Would everyone please rise?
Heavenly Father, I come before you this morning requesting wisdom for these community leaders as they address the important issues and concerns of Indian River County. Bless those who've been chosen by our community to represent us concerning the quality of our life together. Also bless those who may this day be making presentations that they perceive can make our life together better. May today's deliberations be conducted in a decorum of unity and respect, that together all of us can rest assured that your desires for us as a people may be enjoyed by all. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and thank you, Father. Very nice. Commissioners, we had two additional items that were added to the agenda. One was under Utilities 12G1. There's a warranty page. You either should have gotten a hard copy of that, or it is in Granicus on your notepad. And then under Consent 8II, there was a landscape resolution added to that item. And again, you should have that either hard copy or electronic. Are there any other additions, deletions to the agenda? We have a motion from Commissioner Adams, second from Commissioner Flesher. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 5-0. Commissioners, before we move to presentations, I would like to take chairman's discretion for just 1 minute. We have a guest here that I'd like to introduce. As you know, a few months back, we did a proclamation for the retirement of Penny Chandler, the president of the Indian River Chamber. And at this time, I'm very pleased to introduce the new president of the Indian River County Chamber, Mrs. Dory Stone. And Dory, would you like to come up and just say a couple quick words for us and introduce yourself?
Thank you, Chair and Board. I appreciate this very much. I'm Dory Stone, president of the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce, and that's the first time I've gotten to say that publicly, and what a pleasure that is for me to be able to do that. I'm very excited to be here, and I am so looking forward to continuing our close working relationship with the county, with the city of Vero Beach, and with all of Indian River County. We have a wonderful legacy at the Chamber, and I feel it is very much my job to continue that legacy and continue to build on what we've done. And I look forward to working with each one of you as we do that. So thank you very much, and I'll be calling on each one of you to get your thoughts and hopefully recruit you for our events and to come on out and continue to support the Chamber. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Dory. Welcome. Moving to proclamations and presentations, the first is a proclamation honoring James D. Griffin-Reed on his retirement from Indian River County Board of County Commission, Department of Utility Services, Wastewater Treatment Division. James, come on up. You have anybody here with you? Well, they can come up. Come on up. Good morning and welcome. I'll read this proclamation, and we'd love to hear a few words from you, if that's okay.
Morning, how you doing?
Good morning, great.
County for 30 years. My whole career has been in wastewater, and it's been a privilege to protect our waters that we were discharged from our wastewater facilities. And I'm going to miss this place. The staff has always been great. Management's been great, and I'm really sorry to leave this place, but, and again, on one word, I gotta say, yippee. Sorry, I have to end on a high note.
Had to get that out.
Thank you for everything.
Let me read this proclamation for you. You have to suffer through one more thing. Hang on.
Okay.
This is a proclamation honoring James D. Griffin Reed on his retirement from Indian River County Board of County Commissioners, Department of Utility Services, Wastewater Treatment Division. Whereas James D. Griffin Reed retired from Indian River County Wastewater Treatment Division effective August 30, 2018. And whereas James began his career with Indian River County on July 25, 1988 as a wastewater treatment plant operator trainee. He was promoted to a wastewater plant operator C trainee in September 1988. He was then promoted to a wastewater plant operator C in February 1989, then to a wastewater plant operator B in October 1989, and finally to chief operator in October 1994, where he continued in that capacity until his retirement. And whereas James has served this county and the public with distinction and selflessness. During his 30 years of service, he was dedicated and his work was greatly appreciated by the employer, citizens, and coworkers alike. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the board applauds James D. Griffin Reed's efforts on behalf of the county, and the board wishes to express their appreciation for the dedicated service he has given to Indian River County for the last 30 years, and be further proclaimed that the Board of County Commissioners and staff extend heartfelt wishes for success in your future endeavors. Adopted this 14th day of August, 2018, signed by myself as chairman of the Board of County Commissioners. James, thank you very much for your 30 years of service.
Thank you. Very much.
Thank you, James, and congratulations. Here's your ticket out of town, okay? Hang on to that. Yeah, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
There you go. Congratulations, James. Thank you again. Next on the agenda, speaking of many, many years of service, we have a presentation on the City of Vero Beach Centennial Celebration. And this will be presented by City Council Member Tony Young and the City Clerk Tammy Bursick. So Tony and Tammy, come on up. Tell us what's going on for the 100th.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the county commissioners and y'all here for your support of our preparation for the 100th birthday for Vero Beach. And as the county seat, I think you'll enjoy the activities that we have planned. And I would not be here today were it not for Ms. Bursick, who came to me and said, "Council member, you have duty to attend to." So I'm going to introduce this and let Tammy highlight some of the events that we have planned over the coming year, and then I'll step in and add my 2 cents a little bit later. Thank you.
And I am just briefly going to highlight the things going on. There is just so much. It's just been amazing that everybody that we ask in this community, would you like to be involved in the Centennial? And they're like, oh yeah, what can we do? You know, so it's just evolved into a huge, huge event. It's exactly what we wanted. We start on October 26, 2018. We go full circle to October 26, 2019. And the reason that we started October 26, 2018 was because of the football game. They're actually going to have a tribute to the centennial at halftime. The band has been working on that for the whole summer, and it's going to be just a fabulous event. So we start there, and then the next day we go over to Waldo's. He is actually going to have a flagpole presentation, and at the same time he's going to have a time capsule. He's inviting anybody that has things that they'd like to put in the time capsule to bring them to him. And then we move the same day to the afternoon, which will be at Riverside Park, and it's going to be the Chili Challenge, Centennial Chili Challenge. The Rotary Club is putting that on. Then we move into November. The big event in November is November 17th. It's going to be a beachside bonfire, and that's actually going to involve the Waldo's, Vero Beach Hotel and Spa, Mulligan's, and Costa's. They're each going to have their own theme. They're going to have a bonfire on the beach, which you know can only be allowed at the Centennial. We're actually going to have a trolley taking people back and forth from Riverside Park to the event. And then we move into December. We're going to have a huge boat parade on December 17th. We have the marine industries, and Vero Beach Marine are handling that. The city used to do the boat parade, but we really were not that good at doing a boat parade. So we are happy to have passed that on to somebody else. And then we go into our New Year's Eve celebration. That's going to be downtown. Main Street is planning that. They're going to have a ball drop, fireworks at the end of the night, casino in the Heritage Center, and they've just got all kinds of things planned for that event. Then we move into January. We're going to have a trolley ride on the first Saturday of every month. We have a local historian that's going to give the history of Vero Beach. It will start at the Vero Beach Chamber of Commerce, go out to the airport, to the Barrier Island, and then back to the chamber. It's about a 3-hour ride. First come, first serve. Just call the clerk's office if you want to take the ride, and we'll put you down. It's going to hold about between 20 and 25 people. And there's all kinds of concerts going on that month. Then we move into February. In February, the Vero Beach Museum is going to have a centennial exhibit. It's actually going to be from February to May. And that's another month where we have a lot of concerts going on. Then we move into March. March, we're going to have the youth selling is going to have a centennial regatta. And we're going to have Aviation Day. And, of course, one of the big things we're having is pickleball. We never knew how big pickleball was in this town. They are actually going to have a pickleball tournament on the weekend of May 16th and 17th, and they said that it's like 600 people involved in that. Then we move into April, Jackie Robinson's birthday, so we'll have the big baseball game at Dodgertown. Hibiscus Festival, they will have their whole event is going to be geared towards the centennial. They're going to borrow costumes from the Theater Guild and, walk in the costumes in that era. And then we move into May. May is actually Founders Day for Vero Beach. And it's going to be on May 26th, and that's a Sunday. So we're going to start in the afternoon, plant a tree at McWilliams Park, move over to Riverside Theater, and we've asked the interfaith groups in town to just handle the planning of this event, and they have different church choirs coming to sing. They have children's events planned, food trucks, and it's just going to be a really nice family day. And then we move into June, Father's Day, big car show. Instead of the Elks Club, it's going to be at Dodgertown. We move into July, and because of the support we're getting from the county, it's going to be a huge July 4th event. We usually start our July 4th event, which is always sponsored by the county, the city, and Mulligan's, usually about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, this year, because of the centennial, it's going to be totally changed. It's going to start about 1 o'clock. We have the radio station working with us. They're going to have bands playing all day long. Food trucks are going to be out there, vendors, a petting zoo, stuff for the kids to do. So it's just going to be a really fun day, and we appreciate all your support that you're giving to us on that. Moving to August. August is a hot month, so it's just going to be like a leisure square day. People go to the pool, just enjoy the day. September, we're going to kind of catch our breath for our last event, which is going to be in October, the huge birthday party. We are going to start that day off with a parade. Everybody we talk to are really interested in being in that parade. We are looking at having the Clydesdales. Piper wants to have a big airplane in the parade. Cattlemen Association, you name it, floats, and we expect the county to have a nice float in there. And then that day is just, we've actually got 3 committees working on that. Another committee is working on the events that were going to happen on the whole day, and then we'll have a Founders Day part of that celebration also, where we'll invite our founding fathers to the event and, you know, make their introductions, and then we end the day with fireworks. And that is just a brief synopsis of what's going on. I know I missed a lot, but you have the calendar with you, so.
What we've done over, it's going on like 14 months. I mean, we began with 3 people, and then the last opportunity where we had a photograph, the planning group was up over 40 people. Okay, so you can see this is a collection of people that care about the heritage of Vero Beach, and want to take an opportunity to display that. On the screen here, you can see some recent completions, and I put this up here because it just gives you a flavor of what is entailed with putting on the Centennial. One of the accomplishments that we've already been able to complete was a timeline, a chronology with Pam Cooper and Peggy Lyon, and they would take illustrations and depictions of major events by decades, and that'll be on a display banner, kind of like what's over here, where you can take it from one event to the other. So we've already got a concrete accomplishment there. The school district, the philosophy has been to meet with people, give them the idea of what we're doing, and let them mold it to what they want to do. And the school district has done exactly that. Mark Rendell, Dr. Rendell said, we can do this. So literally, as we get ready for the kickoff on the 26th of October against Fort Pierce, that entire week, every day, we will be going to local schools with tree dedications. And so literally there are 15 public schools. There's another 5 charter private schools that will each have a tree in commemoration of 100 years of Vero Beach. And that's just the segue to the football game. And at the football game, the highlight there is the halftime show, and the Vero Beach High School has a professional company that designs these shows. And as Tammy mentioned, the final event for the summer camp, the band camp, was to highlight that. And think to yourself, what is your experience of Vero? And what they've done is the first portion is going to be all about baseball, okay? Jackie Robinson, Dodgers, etc. The middle part will be about the Vero, our culture, that roots there. And then the final part is going to be about aviation. And then around the stadium will be banners depicting various landmarks throughout the town. So you can see the school is already engaged, the families are engaged. We'll segue from that. There'll be an art contest that kids will be able to participate in. That'll be judged in January. There'll be posters for that. And again, highlight who we are. And then following in the summer, or the welcome back, there'll be an essay contest. And you say, well, how does this all come about? It comes about because you have organizations in town who have said, you know what, we're the art club. We're going to judge the art exhibit. Guess what? We're the Laura Ridings Jackson Association. We're going to do the essay portion of that. And so you will be amazed. All I can say is, because as we've gone along, the Benak family has come forward and said, hey, we've got a maze out west of town. Can we have your logo? So they take the logo, and they're going to put a corn maze there for that. The Quilt Association said, hey, we've got a quilt. And I said, okay, a quilt. Well, literally, this is a quilt that is quintessential Vero Beach. It's a day at the beach. It's phenomenal. And they will use that as a way to publicize their organization as well as promote our centennial. If you look at the chart here, I've mentioned a couple things. We put an article in the paper asking for support for photographers and for videographers. I think that's the technical term. They've stepped up. We already have a photo team that's assisting and providing publicity that. The Chamber of Commerce has partnered with us to get the word out as well. So you can see, pick an area, and really it has taken off. We've collaborated, I guess that would be the right word, because not only is it a centennial celebration for Vero Beach, but it's a centennial celebration for Rio Mar, okay? The Press Journal has a centennial celebration as well. The Catholic Church I attend, St. Helens over here, is a centennial year. They've already begun that as well. So we are just adding to the strength of the community. And I would be remiss to stop without speaking of some of the things that we're continuing to work on. The Vero Beach Pipes and Drums have come forward and they said, hey, we want to be integrated. The Theater Guild, likewise. We're working to continue to get the word out, and I appreciate you allowing us to talk because this will help do that. CJ Cannon's Rotary are interested. If you look at the Coast Guard Auxiliary, you know the foundation of our community has rested on our participation in defending the country during World War II. The Coast Guard Auxiliary was a vital part of that. And right on down the line, Casey Lunsford has stepped forward for his son. Lance has said, oh, by the way, I want to do a musical, or not a musical, but a concert, okay? And so that's going to happen. You look at the Quail Valley. I was remiss because I wasn't thinking golf, and Quail Valley said, well, guess what? You know, what about golf? And so maybe there will be an opportunity there as well. But thank you. From the beginning, the county has been engaged. We will have a volunteer recognition celebration at the intergenerational facility, and that is
October 11th.
October 11th. So that'll be right at the start. In addition to that, the assistance for the 4th of July celebration, we appreciate that. And likewise, the culminating parade downtown historic Vero Beach. I mentioned to Jason, we're going to have a departure point and an arrival point. And so we have to find out terrain management to make that happen, because if you think about the immensity of that, it will be huge. Because we will have the Buggy Bunch, we'll have the Cattlemen's Association, we'll have Piper Aircraft, we'll have the bands. So as they progress down Main Street, we'll have to sort that out. And we have, as Tammy mentioned, a parade committee that has been formed, and it will be in conjunction with local police, the sheriff's office, and y'all. So I hope that has been a real informative opportunity. Questions for y'all?
Tony, I have one going back to the time capsule.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way we can stick the old power plant in that thing?
Wow.
Now, which one, the diesel or
The one on the river.
Michael Richter might be real upset about it.
No, the one on the river. We need to get rid of that thing and keep working
Amen.
on that.
Okay. Anything else? Appreciate
Yeah,
everybody's
it
help.
sounds very exciting, and you got lots of things going, so it should be just a great year. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Okay,
it.
thank you. Moving to approval of the minutes, we have June 12th, June 19th, July 3rd, and July 10th.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Adams, second from Commissioner Zork to approve all 4 of the minutes. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify with aye. Aye. That passes 5-0. Moving to informational items, just 2 things I would like to highlight. One is we have a proclamation honoring Catherine Bray on her retirement from Utility Services Customer Service Division with 18 years of service. So, Catherine, thank you very much for your years of service to the community. And then also coming up on September 8th is the Tunnel to Tunnel Run. There is a flyer here. This is honoring the firefighters from 9/11. And that's a great event. Now, Jason, I think last year you put on the bunker gear and ran the 5K. Is that correct?
Yeah, run might be a generous term for that, but
Okay.
I did, and I'm pondering doing it again this year.
Very good. So that's open to everybody, and that will be September 8th at Riverside Park, starting at 7:30. Commissioners, anything else you'd like? Commissioner Zork?
Yes, under 7L, the inclusion within the service area foreign trade zone 218, I wanted to give a public thanks to our counterparts down in St. Lucie County and some of our staff, especially Kate Cotner. We've been working on trying to secure Indian River County as a foreign trade zone with our partners to the north or to the south, and the south option seems to be moving forward briskly, and we're very appreciative of that. And as it continues to move forward, there'll be some informational options that we'll look at how to communicate that with the business community that could take advantage of being designated in the foreign trade zone. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other informational items? Seeing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. Commissioners, does anybody have anything on consent they would like to pull? I would like to pull item H and item GG. And is there anyone in the audience that would like to have a consent agenda item pulled for additional discussion? Okay, seeing none, commissioners?
Move approval as amended.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Adams. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Item H is the quarterly tourist tax report, and I'd just like to ask the clerk, Jeff Smith, to come in and clarify. It's in the backup, but I think if you just look at this, you would think that the tourist tax revenue was down from hotels and motels from last year, but Jeff, there's a reason for that. So if you could just explain the little discrepancy there, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff Smith, Clerk of the Court and Comptroller. The reason that's a negative there is because included in the figures from the prior year were amounts that we collected upon an audit, back taxes. So if you take that out, then we actually had an increase in hotel motel tourist tax for the quarter. So we're adjusting it. That's what the reason is.
Right, good. Thank you very much, Jeff. I just wanted to have that clarified because, you know, we have been having steadily increasing the tourist tax revenue. The chamber folks have been doing a great job bringing people in, and just want to make sure everybody was clear that that was an anomaly and not we're missing anything. So
Move approval.
I'll second that. We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by myself. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 5-0. Item GG is, I just wanted to bring this up for public awareness. Commissioners, a few meetings back, we had an item on the Gifford 45th Street beautification project where the bids came in extremely high. So at the time, we voted not to move forward. However, item 8GG is working towards that goal of getting that beautification project done. This is working on bringing some of the concrete pipe in for the filling of the canal there. So I just want to let the public know we haven't dropped the ball on this. We are still working on it, and we're going to try to make sure we get this done. We just have to kind of go at it from a little bit different route. So we are working on that. I don't know if Freddie or Joe, you guys want to speak to this, or Freddie, you're given an opportunity. I know you're not going to turn it down.
That would be a first.
Good morning, Freddie Woolfolk, 4590 57th Avenue. We've had conversation in reference to this altering plan. And you notice the operative word is altered plan. It didn't mean delayed, does not mean denied. So we appreciate you keeping it on the forefront, and we look forward to coming to completion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Freddie.
Move approval.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second from Commissioner Adams. Is there anyone else that wishes to comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. We now move to constitutional officers and governmental agencies. Item A, Indian River County Sheriff Darrell Lohr requests for authorization to utilize proceeds from auction of surplus property to acquire new like-kind property within current fiscal year.
Move approval.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Slaughter. Is there any discussion? Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. We move to public items. The first is a public hearing. John Chamberlain's request for abandonment of the west 20 feet of Seminole Trail, also known as 10th Avenue, adjacent to Lot 21 of the Riverside Estate subdivision. This is legislative in nature. And good morning to our Community Development Director, Mr. Stan Bowling.
Thank you,
Welcome,
Mr.
Stan.
Chairman. This is a request to abandon a portion of a right-of-way segment in the Riverside Estates subdivision that's located on the North Barrier Island. Subdivision was platted in 1958. It does have access off of Jungle Trail, just a few lots really in the subdivision. And at the eastern end of it, as originally platted, there was a right-of-way actually to extend into adjacent properties that were undeveloped at the time. Actually, a right-of-way segment that went to the south was abandoned in 1999 by the board. There's still an existing segment going to the north here at the end of Morningside Drive. It does provide sort of a backdoor maintenance access for the Jones Pier Conservation Area property. But the rights-of-ways with this plat are 70 feet wide, which is kind of wider than normal. And this request is to abandon 20 feet of that 70 feet of right-of-way. And if abandoned, that would go to the adjacent lot 21, owned by the applicant, Mr. Chamberlain. Just a bit of a kind of a close-up from the recent aerial of this particular portion of right-of-way, Morningside Drive, essentially ending here with the last driveway of residential property. And then really just sort of stabilized grass access back to the Jones Pier Conservation Area property. The 20 feet to be abandoned is shown in the blue. And again, that would go to the adjacent property owner of Lot 21. There is some swale and ditch work area in the rear. And so there is, with part of this abandonment, retaining a 10-foot easement in the back to keep everything remaining as is. And this is just another sketch of that 20 feet that's the subject of the request. So the west 20 feet is not needed for access. County will retain the east 50 feet. That's not formally improved, but it'll remain a stabilized access to the Jones Pier Conservation property, mostly for just maintenance purposes, maintenance access. There is that existing drainage swale along the north end. That'll remain and be retained in a 10-foot wide easement. That is arranged with the resolution that's in your backup material. Staff's recommendation is that the board abandon its rights to the subject 20-foot right-of-way area and retain an easement over the northern 10 feet and authorize the chairman to execute the abandonment resolution. Be glad to answer any questions that you all might have.
Thank you, Stan. Commissioners, any questions of staff? Hearing none, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this matter? Seeing none, having provided ample time for comment, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to move staff recommendation.
Second. Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Slaughter, second by Commissioner Flesher to approve staff recommendation. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Stan. Public discussion items, Mr. Evan Esposito. I do not see him in the audience, and commissioners will reserve a spot for Mr. Esposito if he does show up later in the meeting with your all's consent. We now move to the public notice items, and Mr. Reingold, would you do the honors, please?
Thank you very much. We have a public notice of a tax equity and fiscal responsibility, or otherwise known as TEFRA, public hearing, which will be scheduled for September 11th, 2018, pursuant to Section 147 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, as amended to accept public comment and thereafter consider a plan of finance and the issuance of revenue bonds by the Escambia County Housing Finance Authority. This will be legislative in nature, and again, this will be a public hearing held here on September 11th, and with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Dylan. There are no county administrator matters. We move to departmental matters. Under D, Human Resources, Collective Bargaining Agreement between Indian River County and Teamsters, Local Union Number 769, fiscal year 2018-19 general wage increase, and Jason Brown, the county administrator. Good morning. Welcome, Jason.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. What we have before you is a proposed general wage increase for the Teamsters Collective Bargaining Unit. The Teamsters represents the county's blue-collar employees, represent nearly 300 folks there. We are in the middle of a 3-year collective bargaining agreement with the Teamsters. 2018-19 will be year 3 of that. There was a reopener for a general wage increase. We have negotiated with the Teamsters, between Teamsters and management, and have tentatively agreed to a 2.75% general wage increase. So staff is, that has been ratified by the membership of the Teamsters, and staff is recommending the board's approval of that. I do want to say thank you to Steve Myers, the business representative for the Teamsters and the Teamster membership, for ratifying the agreement, and just for the overall positive relationship we've had with the Teamsters. They've been great. Sometimes the process can become adversarial just because it's a negotiation. Pardon me, but we've had a great collaborative working agreement. So staff is recommending the board approve the 2.75% and the collective bargaining agreement. Also want to point out that we are planning to provide the same increase for the non-union employees. We have one other bargaining unit we are continuing to negotiate with, the IAFF, which represents our 200 plus firefighters. So just an update on that. We hope to be coming back to you with an agreement there, and wanted to mention that we're planning the 2.75% for the non-union employees. With that, I'll stop talking, and I'm available if you have any questions.
And Jason, since the unions ratified this, and if we approve this today, then it will take effect on the very first full pay period, after October 1st. So they won't miss any time on that. Is that correct?
That's correct. It will be in time for October 1st.
Very good. Commissioners, any other questions of staff?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Zork. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Jason. On to F, Public Works. The first item is award of bid number 2018059 for North County offices at Sebastian Corners. Our Public Works Director, Mr. Rich Spirica. Good morning and welcome, Rich.
Morning, Commissioners. Back in July of 2017, the board bought the building in Sebastian for the relocation of the North County offices, which contain the clerk of courts, the property appraiser, the tax collector, veteran services, and utilities. In September of 2017, the board awarded a work order to MBV Engineering to do the design and permitting of the renovations required to move the North County offices into that building. During the design process, we met with the respective departments and to find out what they needed, security measures, things like that, that were being done in other locations and for their employees. During that time, we added some features such as a raised floor, which is used in several other counties. It gives the employees a sense of security as they're eye level with the patrons that are using it, rather than the patrons looking down at them. It's a security feature that most people see, and they respect that. We also looked at utilities. Utilities is, we're going to have some petitions, kind of like we have in the front of Building A, for protection of the utilities where they collect money, things like that. Those were all part of the design process. When we went to permitting, we found that the renovation would require us to upgrade some of the current features that are there to today's hurricane standards, such as the windows and doors needed to be upgraded, the fire sprinkler system needed to be upgraded, which added some additional costs to the project. At the end of all the design and permitting and whatnot, the engineer gave us a cost estimate of about $1.3 million to do the renovations. We advertised the project for about 34 days. 22 contractors picked up the plans or downloaded the plans. 6 local contractors also downloaded the plans as part of that 22. However, we only received 2 bids for the project. One was from Jack Quinn & Sons at $1.8 million plus or minus, and then WJ Construction was at $1.75 million. So we're looking at this as of the cost was high. Staff did not anticipate some of these costs. However, the security upgrades are necessary. We're also looking at the fact of we currently pay rent at the building we're at right now, which is about $100,000 a year. So this will help offset the cost. Since we own the building, we'll be able to put these departments in a building that the county currently owns, which also this building also allows us for expansion. As the county grows and is successful, this will allow us for expansion in the future. After reviewing both bids, the county staff found that WJ Construction was a successful bidder, and that they had also, in looking at their references, we found that they had done 3 tax collector renovations in Brevard County, one of which Carol Jean and her staff went and visited. This where they got some of their items for the security measures that we incorporated into our design. Funding for the project is included in the capital improvements element. Approximately $400,000 is available in optional sales tax, facilities management, interior renovations. A budget amendment from optional sales tax cash forward would be required to fund the remainder of the project. Staff recommends that the project be awarded to WJ Construction Corp. In the amount of $1,775,911 and request that the Board of County Commissioners approve the sample agreement and authorize the chairman to execute said agreement after receipt and approval of the required public construction bond and certificates of insurance, and after the county attorney has approved the agreement as to form and legal sufficiency.
Thank you, Rich. Commissioners, any questions of Rich? Commissioner Wood?
Yes, good morning. In either of the proposals, did we have them put any percentage of contingency, or is it just straight hard bid against the plans, no contingency dollars in the numbers?
They do not put the contingency, the staff does. There is a line item for contingencies. It's in all of our contracts.
Okay.
It allows us to continue with the project so there's no delays for minor changes in cost.
And what's the percentage that?
In this particular case, it's $100,000 in the contingency.
Okay, and then also we have a good change order policy whenever you're working on a building. Other things can come up, so you have a good way of addressing those if they come up as we go forward.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We have a really good work order system, change order system that we utilize on all our construction projects. This project was bid with the same documents we do all of our roadway projects and all of our projects. So it's been vetted and it works really well.
Good. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Any other commissioners? I see Carol Jean Jordan, the tax collector, is here. Carol Jean, did you have any comments on this? Good morning and welcome.
Collector, also Jeff Smith here. It's kind of a joint effort on our part, and I would just like to say thank you to Rich and his staff. They've kept us up on everything that's been happening. Been quite a bit of delay, because of things that you just don't expect. And, as you all know, because I've talked to you personally, I'm very concerned about the office that we're in currently. The property appraiser's already moved out of the section that you all rent. His people are in with us, and we just constantly have issues. We had a flood problem a couple of weeks ago where literally you couldn't turn off the emergency water supplies because everything was rusted through. We have huge air conditioning problems, no balance between the buildings. And I know Rich is concerned about if the air conditioners go out, we have to replace them. That's in this 30-year contract that we've had for that building. So I just say thank you to Rich, thank you to Andy, and thank you to all of you to get our staff and the other constitutional staff out of a very unhealthy building.
Great, thank you. Jeff, did you have anything you want to add to that? Welcome again.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say thank you also to Rich and his staff for what they're doing, and to you all, but also to Carol Jean and her staff for checking out the renovations that this company did up in Brevard. And she's got the lion's share of the employees up there, so we need to make sure that it's secure for her, and I appreciate her going and doing that kind of work, you know, on inspection.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Anyone from the property appraiser's office? Vincent Burke, our utilities director. Vinny, anything from you, or are you good? Great, okay. Commissioners, your pleasure.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Zork, to approve the bid award. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes 5-0. Next, under Public Works, is an update on unmaintained county roads. Again, Mr. Spirica.
Alrighty, unpaved roads, I love this subject. Back in June of 2018, I presented to the board a rather detailed report about our unmaintained right-of-ways and roadways in the county. Board directed staff to go duke it out with St. John's for permitting issues. And so back in July, I met with St. John's, and after several rounds, we came to a mutual agreement, which is a very good agreement, I believe, for both parties. One, this gets us to where we don't, if we submit an exemption permit, which I've gone through the exemption process and the exemptions, we qualify for most of our roads to be exempt from stormwater permitting. What this does is this permitting process allows St. John's to look at it and give us their blessing of whether or not we can go out there and just, as Commissioner O'Brien said, go dump some shell on the road and do some grading out there. You know, so it was a very productive. I want to thank St. John's. They were very receptive to it. We had about an hour-and-a-half meeting. I showed them some videos of some of the roads that we're up against. You know, big potholes, you know, big holes that swallow a car, things like that. And they understand our plight, and they were very receptive to it. So basically, taking that, I did a reduction in cost to take the permitting, and I believe that the right-of-way that we need, because we don't need to, if we don't need to do stormwater, we don't need additional property. I believe that we could get 18-foot wide, low volume roadways within the rights-of-way of most of the areas with some shoulders that will go ahead and meet today's standards. So that's a good thing. One of the issues that we would have to address would be the runoff of the water. Currently, the roads run off onto private property. We have that in Fellsmere. We have that everywhere. That's just the way it is. It's the nature of the beast in the county. Adding material doesn't really increase the road runoff, to be quite honest with you. It's going to just change the scope of what you see. Because when we put the material down, instead of it being the muddy, you know, some of the water stays in the road, it's going to run right off onto the properties. So as part of depending on the board's selection of options, we're going to tailor the permitting process, if the board so desires, to accommodate that. So we ensure that the residents understand that, and there's some sort of agreement that they don't hold the county harmless to do this. In looking at the cost, we can reduce costs quite a bit. You know, it's down from it's down from about 343,000 down to 264,000 per mile. That's a good cost savings. I can reduce that further if we use county staff. The issue with using that is I have to pull most of my equipment. If I use my trucks from my drainage crews, I have to shut down some of my drainage operations repairs, and that's going to put us even further behind in our drainage maintenance and our roadway paving programs, because I've got to pull those pieces of equipment to do that. But if we can do some of these, if they come across, depending on, again, on the board's option, we can go ahead and do some of these in short term. It just depends on what we come up with in the future. So, based on everything that I've got for you, we have 3 options for the board, actually 4 options for the board to consider. Option 1 is to establish an MSTU or MSBU in the study areas I previously provided to you in June of 2018 to fund the existing roadway maintenance and add new County maintain roadway segments by extending the petition milling paving process with construction costs funded by the assessment, 75% for the property owners, 25% by the county, and a maintenance fund by the MSTU, 75-25 split. Option 2 is to establish an MSBU, MSTU in the study areas to fund the existing roadway maintenance and a multi-year expansion program to construct and maintain new maintained county roadway segments. Option 3, continue the existing roadway maintenance as currently funded by the Transportation Fund, add new maintainable unpaved roadway segments by extending the petition paving and milling process to unpaved roadways with construction costs funded by assessment of 75 and 25, and 25% contributed by the Transportation Fund. After completion of the roadway, the county would maintain the roadway as currently funded by the Transportation Fund. Option 4 is just to continue maintaining the roadways that we currently have and not add any unpaved roadways to our current maintenance routes. Funding for the improvements, it depends on the option that the board selects. And once a selection is made, we can look at the funding plan and submit to the board. Staff recommends option 3 to the board.
Thank you, Rich. Commissioners, any questions of staff? Commissioner Adams, or?
I've got one, it's more for the county attorney. So Dylan, with, say, option 3, which looks pretty good, the biggest issue, as I understand it, is the drainage. Would there be any problem, since this is petition paving, to have as part of that a note that if you want this paving, you're going to have to understand that there might be some drainage onto your land from the road? And as part of that, I'm sure Mr. Speaker can come up with something that says that, you know, generally the impact of this isn't too different, and this has been our experience in other locations, so we don't scare them off. But is it easy to just make that part of the process?
Yeah, I think that's what Rich and I were contemplating, and what Rich was saying is that if you've got extra drainage that's going on people's properties, we would then work with those property owners to make sure that we got the necessary sign-offs, waivers, acknowledgements from those property owners, and that would be incorporated as part of the process.
Okay. That seems to me to be the simplest, easiest way to go forward, and it looks like you've done a good job in giving us a good opportunity.
Yes, sir.
Better than what it appeared it might be when it started. Thank you.
Commissioner Adams.
First, I would like to thank Rich for talking to St. John's. I'm quite sure that that was a very exciting conversation that you had with them. And I also, you know, my biggest concern with this whole process has been I don't want to have to fight about adding roads to the system moving forward. I think all these options provide a clear process for new people that are coming into our community and locating in the rural areas that now want additional service. So I do appreciate that we have that process in what you've presented. But just for clarification purposes, because I've had some residents contact me, the extending the petition paving process, we're using that process, but what we're actually doing is it would be like a petition upgrade. So they would be assessed to upgrade the road to the point at which we could then grade it, correct? This is not actually paving.
No, it's not paving. It's the process we currently have. Depending on the board's option selection, we'll tailor the petition. We'll use that as our base, and then we'll tailor it for unpaved roads, adding stabilized material so that we can grade them and add them to our grade route.
So as an example, if, I don't know, everybody on 85th Street, it's not currently maintained or on the greater route, they would like to have it added, you would send the guys out, they would assess how much material might need to be put on that road to bring it up to our maintainable standards, and if there's current drainage pipes or whatever needs to be done, the residents on that road would be assessed that initial cost, the work would be completed, and then it would be added and maintained by the county moving forward.
Correct. That's how the process works. The county does a lot of the work internally. We'll do some survey if needed. We'll assess it. We'll use the dollar amounts that we have. We'll try to buy the material under the funding, under the contracts that we have to keep the cost down. We'll provide a complete cost estimate to the residents. They'll be able to see what it's going to cost We'll discuss how we're gonna build, whether it's frontage, whether it's acreage, we run all those numbers and allow them to choose. And then we move forward, you know, depending on if there's 66 2/3% that wanna do this, then we move the process forward. We come to the board, we present it to the board, and we move forward from there.
Okay, thank you.
So Rich, under that option 3, are we still talking about the 264,000 per mile, or are we going back to just putting some stabilizer down so that we can grade it?
It's gonna depend on the process, it's gonna depend on which roads are which. You know, for some of them, somebody's gonna have to do some earthwork. I'm just gonna say if we do it. I'm gonna have to haul in, you know, some of the roads, I'm gonna have to haul in fill material first. I don't wanna fill the holes with stabilizer. Stabilizer is an expensive, it's more expensive than fill material. So this is just a guesstimate based on what I was using. Again, I use 13th Street Southwest as my example. And I looked at it myself. You know, there's a few pipes that we would need to replace because they're metal. There's major holes that I have to haul in material. And I just kind of did it for the sake of looking at it to see if I have to bid this out, if I have to put this out on the street, I need to have a cost that we're comfortable with. And this is the number I came up. It's gonna move. It's a moving target, but this is the one I'm comfortable with at this point in time.
So my only concern with option 3 is, I think a lot of these streets or right-of-way or donkey carts we're talking about only have a few residences along that stretch, and a lot of the other parcels are vacant lots. And you might also have 1 or 2 people along that stretch that might have, you know, a 40-acre pasture or something, and a lot of frontage. And if we just go with the petition process, my fear is that most of those either out-of-town and undeveloped property owners or the large lot property owners aren't interested now in doing anything to improve the roads. So the petition process won't work, and that's not helping the people that live there now. So that's kind of my concern. And I'd almost rather go with like option 2 or something, to where everybody then is pitching in, and then we would have the funds in a timely manner to start doing some of these and provide relief to the people that live there now. I'm just afraid with option 3, they won't be able to get 67% on the petitions to do that. So that's just kind of my thoughts there. I don't know, commissioners, if anybody else has any comments or.
Well, since we're creating a whole new process, I mean, we could have the threshold be something different than 66%, if that makes you more comfortable. If you really like the MSTU, MSBU idea, I would prefer option 1, so those people that did want to go ahead and move forward could go through the petition process as well, if that's something they wanted to do. But I mean, we're crafting a whole new process, so we could set the parameters wherever we wanted to set them, I would think.
I can do
I
anything.
don't know, Dylan.
Yeah, it's a whole new process, as Commissioner Adams stated. It's the board's discretion to call what it feels is the appropriate buy-in from the community.
I mean, you could do 50% plus 1.
Well,
Commissioner Solari?
I know I'd have a problem with 50% plus 1, especially in an area like that. People who first bought understood what they were buying into. For me, a change like that is fairly radical, and I believe that the percentage ought to be higher, which is basically why we have it today. So
You could also, instead of doing it per parcel, you could do per acre. You could divide the assessment by frontage, linear feet. I mean, we could do whatever, we could create that program however we wanted to.
yeah, those parts of it I'm okay with, but when we talk about individuals who've done something, that's,
Right.
to me,
I think to address the issue of a 40-acre pasture, that if we did it just, per tax identification number equally, so that that large owner isn't penalized more than the guy with 5 acres, would take away, would make it equal for everybody. And the frontage, you know, it is what it is, but he's not getting any more benefit because he has more frontage. He's just gonna have a driveway. So I think that might help a little bit if we skew it that way. We might still have the problem with, you know, the absentee or undeveloped owners, but you know, I could go with number 3 if we do set the petition process on a per tax ID level. So if there's 8 parcels along that road segment, it doesn't matter if one's 40 acres or one's 5, we're just gonna divide the cost by 8. So each driveway basically is paying the same share. That,
Okay, could I ask if either Rich or the county attorney or county administrator see any issue with that?
Usually I like to give sort of a community that's coming forward with their petition to kind of have their choice of, you know, are we going to do it per linear foot? Are we going to do it per area? Are we going to do it per home? And that way they're a part of the process. The issue is it's just always going to be making sure that whatever that basis is, there's a legitimate benefit per blank, whatever that is, whether it's linear foot per home, that justifies it. If it's the type of issue where, you know, every house gets one driveway and therefore every house is equally benefited, then I think that's a legitimate argument. But those are just some of my thoughts on the issue.
And I would say, we've been thinking of the same things on like the 40-acre parcel question. We think that's potentially a good solution for those. I would say we want to have flexibility. We don't want to lock ourselves into one thing because different streets have different characteristics, and it might make sense to do per parcel on one street, and it may make sense to do per linear foot on another street. So I hear what the chairman's saying, and I think that's probably a viable solution where you have, you know, several smaller parcels in one 40 or 80 acre parcel. That if you did it on square footage, the 80 acre or the 40 acre parcel is going to get a really big bill. But I think flexibility is good in this, that we can make something work for whatever street or whatever group of streets that we're working on.
okay, and I didn't mean to make it as that would be the only way to do it, just as long as that was an option on a per parcel basis. I think that'll be the fairest, but I'm fine having all the options open, but just to make sure the per parcel option is available.
It's actually part of the process. We've used it before. We look at all of our options. We try to. 13th Street Southwest, again, back to my example, there are 2.5 acre parcels. I think there's 2 of them. There's a couple 5 acres. There's one 20 acre and 2 40s, plus some 80 acre parcels that don't even connect. So that's the gambit. So if you were to look at those, you know, that's a good cross section of what we have. Per acre parcel, per driveway. You know, the smaller parcels may not want to do it because it's too expensive, where the bigger ones would. A frontage thing, doing it by frontage, it's a fair equity for some. But again, like you said, you know, the big 40 acre parcel, they're going to have a larger bill. So we try to give all the options to the petitioners and let them try to decide amongst themselves with our help, which is the best for them. Because then they can come up to an agreement amongst themselves. It makes it easier for all of us when we come to the board that they have a consensus of what they want to do, and that's one of the options that we do have.
Okay, good. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this? Good morning, Mr. Paladin. Welcome.
Joe Paladin, President of Black Swan Consulting, also Atlantic Coast Building. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me ask you a question. Is this motion you made, is this at the 50% plus 1, or are we at 67% yet?
We're still at 66.7, right?
Actually, I think we're still at 75% if we're going by the staff recommendation.
No, that's the cost split.
Okay.
But it's 67% of the
So we're still
property
at
owners.
67%?
Yeah.
I support staff on option number 3. I think it does the least amount of damage and gives the people the most amount of options going forward. And I think you got to look at this as a case-by-case deal, depending on what street it is. I think you got to leave that option open for staff. And I just want to take this opportunity to tell you, I think Rich is doing a terrific job, and I support Rich and staff because they're really going out of their way to do what's right. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Good morning, welcome.
Good morning, I'm John Orcutt, and I happen to have a parcel of property on one of the example sites, site number 1. And I'd be really happy to be the guinea pig and kind of work through this system and coordinate. And I'd like to thank Rick for all the communication with my wife, educating us on what they're thinking. So I volunteer to be first up with this.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Orcutt. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Johnson, good morning, welcome.
Morning, Bob Johnson, Corwin Subdivision. Sitting back over the years, one of the things I've observed is that the developers seem to run out of money about the time it comes to paving the county roads. So I think if we ought to consider that in the process too, because one of the projects, I think, like the 26, the developer was required to build the road first and then go into his development instead of paving the road last. So just an observation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to comment? Yes, sir. Good morning. Welcome. Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Henry Kantorski. We're staying at 12760 103rd Street. We just happened to move there, take care of grandparents who can't really get around. We've gone through 3 cars in 2 years trying to get back and forth down the road. When you were saying you could sink a car, that was our street. We couldn't wait any longer. So between me and one other homeowner on that street, we paid $1,300, had the culvert redone because the county couldn't argue whether it was the county or the city. So we paid for it. Spent another $1,400 this year on filling in the holes ourselves and having it graded so emergency vehicles could at least make it to our property. Thankfully, 4 days ago, we had the bad thunderstorm. Lightning struck the preserve right behind our house, caught on fire. So they wouldn't have been able to get down there if we didn't do the road ourselves at the beginning of this year. I'm not sure how you want to work your percentages, but we're the very last one on that roadway. Mr. Ketty, who lives right next door on the next 5-acre parcel, we've paid for everything. The next 15 to 20 acres, nobody wants to take care of, nobody lives there. So I don't think they should have a say in it. You're paying your property taxes already, you deal with it. We're the ones that are living there, we have to suffer through it. Through the drainage, we could care less. When it rains out there, it floods anyways. If you don't have a truck, you're not getting out. So if it's got to run off another 1.5 feet of water, our 2 ponds connect. I mean, we had the hurricane, it was a river all the way down the street, so that's the least of our issues. But getting it maintained so fire rescue can get down there to take care of everybody and do everything, that's the issue. So it'd be nice if somebody could maintain it, because me going down the street with a chainsaw, not a great idea with the power lines overhanging. So it'd be nice to have it maintained. So option 3 is fine, option 1, as long as we have a say in it and we can get through it, we're happy.
And that is the exact example road that I was thinking about in Fellsmere, because it's literally like this. There's some issues with the water control district and the drainage. And I think we've been out there, Rich. So having a process for people to come to the county and be able to work through instead of, you know, well, we aren't, you know, this is exactly that. So I appreciate you being here. So thank you.
Hope it all can get resolved somehow.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishes to speak to this? Okay, commissioners, your pleasure.
I'd like to move staff recommendation of option 3 with a big thank you to Rich and Public Works for all their hard work on this.
Second. We have a motion from Commissioner Adams for option 3, second by Commissioner Flesher. Any discussion on the motion, Commissioner Zork?
Yes, Rich, you know, we've been fielding calls from South County folks where it turns out their east-west segment is not a public right-of-way piece. I think we had one on 17th, or maybe it was 25th, I don't know, there was a couple of them.
17th Street Southwest, west of where we just built.
Right.
On 7th Avenue, I'm aware of.
So The segments that do not have public right-of-way, recorded public right-of-way would not be eligible to participate in this, I wouldn't think, or if they donate the right-of-way or whoever's in control of the right-of-way donates it, then it could become an eligible section of roadway.
They could go through the right-of-way donation process and donate the right-of-way to us, and then we'd go from there. It'd just become another unmaintained county right-of-way until we did option 3.
So they did a petition process
We would treat it the same way.
Okay. And we wouldn't have to bring it up to standards to do the dedication, because they would then be assessed to bring it up to standard, whatever the standard would be, in their assessment.
They wouldn't be assessed for the dedication.
Correct. But they'd be assessed for whatever the substandard is, bringing it up to this new level. Okay. That may bring some relief to some of those folks. All right, I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Rich, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Moving on to utility services, item 1, emergency repair of the South County wastewater treatment facility, self-cleaning bar filter screen. Good morning, Vinny.
Morning. For the record, Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services. We have an emergency repair of the South County wastewater treatment facility where actually Mr. Jim DeGraffenreid was the chief operator for many years. We're asking for board approval to allow the AquaGuard equipment to be put in place by Parks Incorporation, who's the original manufacturer and supplier of the self-cleaning bar screen. It's a little bit tricky with the request, so bear with me, but initially, staff had worked with the purchasing division to issue an emergency purchase order, number 81153, in the amount of $49,662 due to the long lead time of some of the parts and pieces. What we're asking for today is a combination of the initial purchase order with additional installation services of $19,540, bringing the sum total to $69,202. So staff is recommending that the Board of County Commissioners, number 1, approve the Parks Incorporation as a sole source vendor for the AquaGuard self-cleaning bar filter screen at the South County wastewater treatment plant, and for this purchase and any future needs for the repair of the county's screen equipment. Secondarily, to authorize the purchasing division to increase the purchase order 81153 into Parks Incorporation already for a total of $69,202 to cover the full cost of the project, both the parts and the installation. We added the warranty information, which was apart from their standard. The warranty initially was when the shipment came from the factory, but we requested that the warranty go into effect after Parks installs it, so that was the emergency addition that the board got. We'd ask the board to authorize the chairman to execute the standard condition and sale, including the Parks and quote, after review and approval by the county attorney as to form and legal sufficiency. And lastly, to approve the rollover funds allocated in this fiscal year budget and under our renewal and replacement operating budget to combine then into next fiscal year's 2018-2019 R&R operating budget to complete the project as described in the attached quote, and available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Vinny. Any questions of staff? Okay, commissioners?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Commissioner Zork, second by Commissioner Adams to approve staff recommendation. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment? Mr. Johnson, please come up.
Bob Johnson, we're talking about 12G1, right?
Yes, sir.
I always, it's interesting when they use the word emergency repair. I wonder when the last emergency repair was done and what would preclude us from having another emergency repair 2 or 3 months from now. It seemed like it ought to be a routine maintenance and not emergency every time this is done. So can we find out when the last time it was and what would preclude us from having this as an emergency again? Thank you.
Yes.
Yep, that's a good question. Actually, we had in our next year's budget funds for the replacement of this device, since it's over 9 years old and it's a pretty nasty environment. If you bear with me, I have some pictures here. So here's just some of the pictures that we were able to put together so that the board could take a look at the bar screen facility. There's a lot of moving parts and pieces to this. It does a good job of cleaning out some of the nasty material that for some reason gets put into the conveyance system that makes its way to the South Wastewater Treatment Plant. You can see it's pretty dirty. The guys are now having to go in there and manually clean this thing. You can see the rotating assembly and the cleaning material to keep the nasties, the sand and grit and other projectiles from getting into the treatment processes. So just to reiterate, we had included this as part of our fiscal year 18-19, but due to the severe wear and tear, now we're having to do it under emergency purposes. So staff is able to manually clean this, but it's getting to be where we may have to stay on top of it, only because we sometimes divert flow from one of our regional master pump stations, lift station 89, next to our off of Oslo. And in some cases, we can't always tell when that's going to happen, especially with high rain events. So there could be a bypass situation where this material gets past the initial bar screen, but we're asking for board approval, one, because it broke down prior to us being proactive in next year's fiscal budget.
Okay. Thank you, Vinny. Is there anyone else from the public wishes to speak to this motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries 5-0. Second item under utilities, and I like the sound of this one, the Lakeside Raptor Unit, number 1 and 2. Rehabilitation and request for sole source. Mr. Burke.
Okay, thank you. You may recall prior to my arrival that the sludge dewatering facility was actually relocated from the central wastewater treatment plant down to the landfill. So in February of 2009, the board authorized the direct purchase of 2 Lakeside Raptor septage receivers. These are the units that are at the front end for when the septage haulers and the grease haulers empty the material at the residual dewatering facility. And again, we're trying to be proactive in trying to make sure that we replace these things, not under emergency purchase order, but certainly before they break. They're a pretty heavy-duty system where they received, or have received since they were put into service, over 95 million gallons of septage and grease from local households and businesses. So we have a great mechanic down there now who's taken a good job of maintaining these units. But I know that when we have emergency storm events or high rain events, we're asked to keep the residual dewatering facility open sometimes to 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night while folks are getting their septic tanks pumped out. So it's critical that the county has good operating units in place for when we have not only the daily demand of meeting our haulers' schedules, but also for emergency events. So we had initially included in this year's fiscal budget $250,000 for the equipment rehabilitation. But when staff went out to the original equipment manufacturer and received prices, it came in a little bit higher than what we anticipated. So we're asking for a 4-part authorization from board approval. One is to approve Lakeside Equipment Corporation as a sole source vendor for Lakeside equipment for this purchase and any future needs for the repair of the county's Lakeside equipment. One, because the existing frame and electrical services are already there. They've been doing a good job for the last 8 or 9 years. Secondarily, to approve the rollover of the $250,000 that we had earmarked in this fiscal year budget in our renewal and replacement operating budget, to then combine that or put that into the fiscal year 18-19 R&R operating budget. If it's approved, we're waiting for that approval in September of this year to complete the project as described in the quote dated June 20th, 2018 for a total amount of $427,889. To certainly authorize the purchasing division to issue a purchase order as needed, and authorize the purchasing manager to sign the quotation acceptance form only after the county attorney has reviewed for form and approval. I'm certainly available for any questions the board may have.
Commissioners, any questions of Vinny? Okay, your
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Zork. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion also carries 5-0. Third item is sole source for West Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility, the Hawk Nitro Tax meters. Mr. Burke again.
As you know, the county's West Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant is under existing consent order with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Since we have put a cease and desist for out-of-county material coming into the RDF, we have seen a drastic decrease in the hot loads, so to speak, that are being transmitted over to West Regional. But with that being said, staff is looking for approval to have more real-time data associated with the operation and maintenance of that plant. I'm happy to report that we are and continue to be in permit compliance, but these probes were basically on loaner from a company that we hired to help do some operational processes. Those probes are set to be removed here in the next 30 to 45 days. So staff researched the same type of probes and reached out to Hawk. What they do is allow us to look at the nitrate monitoring levels real time. It's tied into our SCADA system, our supervisory control and data acquisition system, so that the operators, whether or not they're walking around or at the plant, can see what's happening real time and make some tweaks and adjustments as necessary. The total cost for the supply, installation, and calibration of these Nitrax meters is $64,299.78, and staff is recommending that the Board of County Commissioners approve the purchase of 3 Nitra Tax Plus SC 2mm metering systems and authorize the purchasing division to issue a purchase order to Hawk Company for a total of $64,299.78.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Hearing none. Commissioners?
Motion to approve.
I'll second that. We have a motion from Commissioner Zork, second by myself. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on this motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Moving to the fourth item, Blue Cypress Lake water quality analysis. Again, Mr. Burke.
Okay, thank you. As you may recall, on Tuesday, July 17, 2018, the board approved ordinance 2018-016 authorizing a temporary moratorium on the land application of Class B type biosolids for 180 days. There was a public hearing, there was discussion from interested parties and stakeholders, and staff was asked to investigate some of the issues going on with Blue Cypress Lake. To that effect, staff reached out to a continuing service provider, Jones Edmond Associates. They are subject matter experts, and they have some folks on their team and subcontractors with Yannicki Environmental to provide staff some additional services to be able to help investigate, especially with the short time frame. And so, in the essence of time, there was a purchase order issued, number 81168, in the amount of $14,995 for certain parts of the scope of work necessary to engage the services of JEA. Since we only have one board meeting this month, we didn't want to wait initial 3+ weeks to get started. So that purchase order for $14,995 was issued to JEA under the Continuing Engineering Services Contract Agreement for Professional Services, in which the 3 tasks were removed from the overall scope, but we're here today to ask for the additional scope of work to combine the PO and to increase the additional tasks for some total of $63,485. The budget funds would be coming from not utilities, but under the stormwater account. And so we're asking under a separate item for the budget department to do a budget amendment, since these funds were not anticipated in this current fiscal year. Before we get into staff recommendation, I just want to give the board an update of where we are to date. We've pulled some of the data that's up on some of the databases, the Stored, and some of the water quality data that's been put onto the Oculus into some of the databases. Staff had a conference call with members of the district and the Florida Department of Environmental Protection and the JEA team members last week. And we had folks on the phone like Dr. Marsloff, Sherry Williams, Mr. Hendrickson, who have intimate knowledge and familiarity with what's going on at the Blue Cypress Lake area and for some of the testing that's been done by the district. We also had Tom Frick and Mr. Whiting that were on the line from the Department of Environmental Protection. I believe there was a site visit last Friday out to the Presley Ranch. I believe IFIS, the DP, and the district were on site. Culminating that site visit, there's going to be a framework plan moving forward with respect to the agencies and what they're going to be doing as far as testing locations, soil analysis, both surface and perhaps groundwater. So in the approval that we have here today, we staff have not recommended any sampling that the county should be doing at this time. We wanted to see and wait to find out what the regulatory agencies could come with, do a gap analysis for what testing has already been done, see what additional testing will be done by the DEP in the district, and then perhaps formulate a plan in place to assist or to come up with additional testing. So We've asked for that plan. We certainly hope to be getting that, I believe, this week, and we can certainly share that with the board if they so desire. But coming back to the agenda item, I just wanted to reiterate that staff recommends that the Board of County Commissioners authorize the chairman to execute the attached work order number 1 on their behalf for a lump sum amount of $48,490 to Jones Edmonds and Associates, and to approve the sum total of $63,485 to JEA to be funded from the stormwater account. Certainly available for any questions that the board may have.
Thank you. Vinny, I think we have someone from Jones Edmonds here, and I'd like to hear, do we know what we're sampling for that will be the definitive word that, yes, these nutrients are coming from a biosolid source? Have they nailed that down yet?
They're in the process of doing that. We did talk to the DEP. I did talk to Director Smith. I believe they took samples of the Broward County facility, of which 90% of the material went to the Presley Ranch for land applying of the biosolids. And so they were looking at specific markers that may indicate whether or not there's anthropogenic influences, including but not limited to things like acetaminophen or ibuprofen or hydrocodone, which is a pain reliever. So they're testing out some of those anthropogenic markers, maybe like sucralose. They haven't given us any definitive levels of what they should be, but certainly that's something that the department is looking at. They mentioned that on the phone call, and they'll be doing some of those testings, I believe. That's where we're trying to get a handle on, where are they going to be testing, what are they going to be testing for, and the frequency of the testing. What they also mentioned is that not only were they going to be doing some frequency samplings of, say, when it's sunny out, but they want to have a plan in place that when there's high precipitation events, much the same way that Alexis was doing so in the canal systems, they get on top of this thing to see if there's any runoff or any storm surge that could be happening. So it's right now a fluid. I don't have one specific marker, but I think they're looking at a bevy of markers to determine whether or not there are or not anthropogenic influences.
And then, are they going to be looking not only in the lake, but I guess the path along to the lake? Because the biosolids were deposited in late April and early to mid-May. And then we had, I don't know, it was either 10 or 12 inches of rain in May. Would those markers, still be out there at this point in time? Would they have flushed out of the biosolids and now there's none left in the biosolid? Some of those things, to make sure if we're looking for these things, are we sure that if that's where they came from, are we going to make sure we can still find them, I guess is my question.
And like Dr. LaPointe, like some of the testing that Edie has done, we've tried to see if there's certain markers that don't biologically break down. So we believe sucralose is one of those that no matter how much biological processes are done, whether or not there's soil or there's some percolation, there still would be some markers in the water column, both at the groundwater, perhaps the subsurface area. So that's number one. We do know that DP has said that they're taking this thing very seriously. We asked to be kept apprised of what's going on as far as the meeting that happened last Friday, so we hope to get a better idea of what's happening. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we have a full bevy of the testing. They did also mention that they're going to be looking at Osceola as well to the west. There are some kind of sheet flow. We've requested some flow data as far as what's going on with the entire site. They're also looking at places south of State Road 60 where there's some drainage that comes into that area. So we don't know because, and looking at some of the historical charts, there was a noticeable increase, I would say 5 or 6 years before the biosolids application took place. We want to know why that is. Was it from from the State Road 60 improvements that had better drainage? Were they from some historical legacy loads that are now moving to the Blue Cypress Lake area? But I think the department and the district is looking holistically, not just at the Presley Ranch, but at other areas that might be influencing some of the levels that we're seeing. So I think that's where the plan is going to be, I think, representative, not only in and around the Presley area, but in and around the shoreline. What they did also say in the conference call is I believe the district has almost like a central location in Blue Cypress Lake area. And a lot of times you can sample on the very same day at the very same water column depth in the center part of that lake and on the shoreline, you'll get totally two different results. So that's something that they're going to be looking at is, time of day, water column depth, temperature, pH, and some of the things that are happening at that particular time. They're also going to be looking on the northeast corner where that flow directs to the St. John's, head of the St. John's, to try to find out if there's any kind of biological process happening before the waters leave. recall that this is a Class 1 water body for the heads of the St. John River, so I think it's going to be a pretty complex initiative, and we've been at least verbally told that both the district and the department are taking this very seriously and are committing some resources to that effect.
And then what Jones Edmonds will be doing, will be looking at some of the historical data and helping clarify that for us?
Yep, and we want to do like a gap analysis to see what's out there, see what the district is doing, and then we may have to come back and maybe fill in the gaps or just say, well, maybe that's enough data, let's see what the results are, and then combine that in a way that can make sense of what's happening.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any other questions of Vinnie? With that,
Move staff recommendation?
we have a motion.
Second.
In,
Oh.
okay. Motion by Commissioner Fleury, second by Commissioner Flesher. Mr. Johnson?
Recently, last week, I was reading this book on the Blue Cypress system. As Mr. Solaria discussed it about how the system started at Blue Cypress, and it's either, actually it's further south too, it starts, but all the way up to Jacksonville. But one of the things I noticed in the one of the charts is that the funding for most of the Blue Cypress area was a federal responsibility, and the west side was a county responsibility. And this was a big, thick document, well done. The Audubon Society had a large input into this document, and I just wanted to bring that to, I don't know how this is being funded, but in that particular chart for the Blue Cypress area, it had the area where we were talking about where the bio material was dumped was a federal responsibility. I guess that's the Corps of Engineers' responsibility when it comes to federal, but I thought I'd mention that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson, appreciate it. Anyone else from the public wish to comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0, excuse me. Usually we take a break around 10:30. Commissioners, are we okay getting the last utility item done, or you want to go ahead and break now?
We can get the last utility item done.
Okay, great, thank you. So Vinnie, last item, final ranking of firms. Authorization, enter negotiations and issue work authorization for consultant assistant for next phase of project. The agenda item doesn't really say it clearly, but this is going back to a meter monitoring and meter management project you all have going, and just continuing with that. So with that, Mr. Burke.
Yep, so you may recall that back in October of last year, October 24th, 2017, the board met and staff had recommended to reject all the proposals received in response to RFP 2017-041 for an advanced meter infrastructure, or what we call AMI, and the meter data management system to collect and to house and to analyze all the data that was collected. So staff was tasked to go back, realign the scope a little more closely for what would be in line for what the county was looking for. And so RFP 2018-014 was an either or. It was for an AMI MDM solution with the add alternate for automatic meter reading AMR. You may recall that we have about 13 or so thousand AMR meters in place today. The majority, 70 or so % of our other meters are manual read, where the guys are getting out of their truck and reading those manually. And so it was advertised, the second swipe was advertised in March of this year. 6 firms responded to the RFP. However, 2 firms were determined to be non-responsive to the solicitation requirements for the prime firm to hold an active Florida contractor's license to do this work. So a selection committee of Mr. Smykowski, Mr. Burke, Mrs. Corrente, Mrs. Patton, and Mr. Dancy all ranked independently the results of the submittals. They met, and at that time, based on the submittals that were placed, they decided that the AMI portion of the project may not be currently financially feasible due to the county, due to the logistically intensive process. So the AMI system, as you recall, is a set of meters that are located at the right-of-way that transmit the data to a central location remotely, and that information is pulled in here at the admin building. But you're talking towers, telecommunication, and sophisticated infrastructure. So due to that reason, the folks on the selection committee focused on the AMR portion, which is the radio read portion, which is still a drive-by portion of the process. Due to meter pricing available to the county as well as a sales tax exemption, one of the options considered was for the county to purchase those radio read meters directly. And field staff is pretty happy with the existing manufacturer who's master meter right now that have what they call a UTG, under the glass antenna system with no wires. It makes splicing and other connection errors non-existent if the radio read has that antenna under the glass. So the 3 top firms were ranked. However, after meeting, the top 2 firms were asked to provide their best and final offer, the BAFO. And so the selection committee met once again and ranked independently their results after the best and final offer. And you see the results in the attached backup under the table where it says final ranking after the review of the best and final offers. Where National Metering Services was the overall lowest ranked, or I should say the highest ranked, number 1, lowest score, with Professional Meters Incorporated in second. National Metering Services is out of New Jersey, but they have done this installation throughout the country. They cited examples in New York City where they have high density, in some cases have to get into folks' basements to do the install. We don't have that here in Florida, but certainly they have the expertise and the wherewithal through the backup that they had provided. So staff has been at this thing for a while. I recall back in 2014 when the board approved Langham Consultant to be our subject matter expert to help us in this process. So the second part of the agenda item is to ask for board approval to use the services of Langham Consulting under Task 5 of a previous approved RFP for which Langham Consulting was selected as the county's consultant for this effort. And that effort is a not to exceed $31,980. So the agenda here is twofold. One is to say that the selection committee has focused on an AMR portion of the meter replacement project, but also to seek approval for the negotiation. And so we anticipate looking at the numbers, looking at a contract, and then coming up with a logistically sensitive package that we can come back to the board for final approval. So this is just to ask approval to negotiate for that contractual obligation, given the best and final offer from National Meter Services. So finally, the staff recommends that the Board of County Commissioners approve the committee's final ranking of firms and authorize the department to begin negotiations with the top-ranked firm. In this case, it's National Metering Services, and the subsequently ranked firm should negotiations with the top-ranked firm fail. Secondarily, staff recommends the board authorize the purchasing division to issue a purchase order to Langham Consultant Services for Task 5 of the previously approved RFP 2014-043 for a not-to-exceed amount of $31,980. Certainly available for any questions that the board may have at this time.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions of staff? Seeing none, your pleasure.
What's staff recommendation?
I'll second the motion. We have a motion by Commissioner Flesher, second by myself for staff recommendation. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. We'll take a brief recess here and come back at 10:47. Mr. Reingold.
Thank you very much. First off, pursuant to Resolution 2017-124 adopted by the board back in December, the county has demolished 3 separate buildings. We've got a property of 3770 69th Street, 8720 92nd Avenue, and 1041 10th Court. The demolition costs were $9,501.62, $7,490.98, and $3,751.79 respectively. It is now time to the next step in the process, which is for the county to record the lien of these specific dollar amounts. Simply want to note that the property that was demolished at 1041 10th Court has actually since then escheated to the county, so that is our property now, so we do not need to record a lien. So thus, simply was looking for the board to take any comments from any interested parties as to the amount of the proposed liens, and then approve the lien amounts and authorize the chair to execute and sign any of the liens for recordation. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Dylan. Commissioners, any questions of Dylan? Is there anyone in the public that wishes to comment on these demolition liens? Seeing none, Commissioners, your pleasure.
Move. Please go ahead.
Move county attorney's recommendation.
We have a motion by Commissioner Slaughter, second by Commissioner Flesher. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Second item is the Community Development Block Grant Citizen Advisory Task Force appointment. Mr. Reingold.
Thank you very much. On June 8th, Joe Adelet Jr. had announced his resignation from the Community Development Block Grant Citizen Advisory Task Force. The position has been posted for well over 30 days, and we've actually received applications and resumes from 4 interested individuals to fill this vacant position. One is from Evan Esposito, one is from Glendon Swanson Massa, one is from Gary Randall, and one is from Arja Rigby. County Attorney's Office simply recommends that the board consider the resumes that have been submitted and determine whether to appoint one of these individuals to fill the vacant position. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Dylan. Commissioners, any questions of Dylan? Hearing none, does anyone from the public wish to speak? Okay, Commissioners, does someone like to make a nomination?
Mr. Chairman, is any of the applicants present? Perhaps maybe we have the opportunity.
Well,
Mr. Rigby?
I see one.
as you speak,
So we do have one of the applicants present. Is there any others?
I don't believe so.
Perhaps maybe the applicant would like to speak?
He's more than welcome to. Mr. Rigby, would you like to, we
Thank
are
you,
on
Mr.
the
Chairman.
Community Development Block Grant Citizens Advisory Task Force appointment.
Good morning, Commissioners. I do appreciate the opportunity that you allowed me to come and speak on this behalf. I really would like to have this position so that at least Wabasso would have some representation. And I hope that you consider that I am the president of West Wabasso and that it would seem to me to be appropriate to be there. But that's just my position on it. And I think it'll be an add-in addition to the task force, which I think is vastly needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rigby.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I will tell you that subsequent to, I guess, default or other obligations, I was assigned the community grant block meeting, and I appreciated the opportunity, and I did note that Mr. Rigby was present and did have some input and did talk about the community as well. And at that point, he was aware that Mr. Adelet tendered his resignation publicly at the meeting, and Mr. Rigby proceeded upstairs to file an application. And he expressed to the board, the sitting board, that he would like to serve on the committee, and he was then instructed to go upstairs and fill out an application.
Commissioner Fleischer, would you like to make a nomination?
I'd like to make a nomination for Arja Rigby to be appointed to the committee at this time.
Second nomination.
Very well. We have a motion from Commissioner Fleischer, seconded by Commissioner Solari, to nominate Arja Rigby to the Task Force Advisory Committee. Any discussion on the motion?
I have a comment. Moving forward, a lot of these applications that we get are really old. So is there a process by which, because one of them's 5 years old.
We tend to call the applicants and then just kind of say, hey, are you still interested in serving in the county, or still interested in being on this board? And we get a, yep, I'm still interested. Okay, thank you very much.
That's my only question.
Yeah, I noticed some of them were dated as well, but Jason had told me they do call them up and see if they're still interested, so. But Mr. Rigby's application was very fresh.
It's about as fresh as you get. But with that, and Mr. Chairman, I will say that I did review all the applications, and I want to thank all the applicants for agreeing to serve on a board, and some of the applications are rather impressive, and by no means does that mean that they're limited by not serving on any other board. Some of the applicants have many other selections that they're seeking to serve on too. We do appreciate the citizens coming forward and volunteering on our advisory boards.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Mr. Reingold, your third item, the Florida Institute of Technology Marine Laboratory property.
Thank you very much. Last year, Florida Institute of Technology, or FIT, issued an RFP for the sale of the Vero Beach Marine Lab that's located adjacent to the county's Tracking Station Park. As part of the process, Indian River County had actually submitted a proposal. FIT at the time had decided not to sell the property. During the process, it was discovered that there were some legal questions as to the access to the property. And then in order to resolve this issue, Indian River County staff and FIT staff have negotiated an access agreement that provides Indian River County with a beach easement, which addresses public use of the beach and sea turtle monitoring of the beach. The access agreement also requires a 25-foot vegetative buffer, which will be along the northern part of the FIT property. Additionally, FIT will be dedicating to the county the 15 feet on the east part of the west part of the property. This will assist the county in providing better access to the Tracking Station Park. And finally, both Indian River County and FIT will be providing right-of-way property, thus to extend 46th, I believe it's Place to the property. Very pleased with the negotiations and the working relationship between FIT and also the county staff. County Attorney's Office simply recommends that the board approve the access agreement and the right-of-way resolution, which is attached as part of the packet, and authorize the chair to execute the documents after review and approval by the county attorney. There may be some small changes. A couple of the documents, like the vegetative buffer, was not the one that we had originally agreed to, but we will certainly get that up to the one that both parties agreed to. We had specifically referenced the type of buffer in our landscape code that was required, and it just happens not to be on the one that was attached. That's just simply want to make sure that the chair is authorized to sign the necessary documents after review and approval by the county attorney. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair and also want to note that Frank Kinney is here from FIT for any questions that the board may have of FIT.
Thank you, Dylan. Commissioners, any questions of Dylan?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Zork.
The FIT property actually sits in whose jurisdictional footprint? Indian River Shores, City of Vero Beach, or the county?
It's in the unincorporated area of the county. So property to the north and west is in the town of Indian River Shores. Property to the south is in the city of Vero, but there is, I'd call it an enclave, that's unincorporated area, which contains the Tracking Station Park, our beachfront park, and the FIT parcel.
And where I'm going with this is, at some point, if the property is ever sold and something is proposed to be built there, who would coordinate a planning aspect and traffic study on 46th Place in A1A, which is currently a very challenging ingress and egress? If it's in the unincorporated, does that mean they would apply to the county for a site plan and we would look at the traffic study? Or if they change jurisdictions, I guess it would go to whoever they change to.
Right, if it's in the unincorporated area, and Rich is coming up, so I'll let him answer it, as he can better than I.
Rich Berger, Public Works Director. Regardless of which jurisdiction it's in, it's county right-of-way. DOT will notify us of any subsequent increase in activity at that location because it is on A1A, but they always notify us when it affects our roadway that connects to their roadway.
Okay.
So whichever jurisdiction, whatever it is, we'll know about it.
Okay. Great, thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Kinney, did you want to come speak anything, or you're good with the agreement? And okay, very good. Commissioners, your pleasure.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Adams, second by Commissioner Zork to approve the agreement. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 5-0. And Mr. Reingold, your final item is the Florida Public Service Commission hearing.
Thank you very much again. On July 2nd, 2018, the Florida Public Service Commission entered an order which allowed for the FPL to charge its rates to the City of Vero Beach customers. It approved the determination or the elimination of the territorial agreement, and then approved a positive acquisition adjustment of $116.2 million, and also allowed for recovery with respect to the FPL OUC agreements. Essentially, this approved the sale of the City of Vero Beach electric system in the manner in which it was approved and established and structured. Since then, there have been 4 different petitions that have been filed challenging this action. In response, the PSC has issued an order establishing procedure and has set a de novo hearing for October 9th and October 10th. It initially had been set for October 10th and 11th, but due to a motion by one of the parties, it had been moved up 1 day to October 9th and October 10th. County Attorney's Office recommends that Indian River County seek to file a motion to intervene in this matter. If Indian River County intervenes, Indian River County will need to meet all of the various timelines that are set forth within the order, and will even be subject to various discovery motions by the other parties. County Attorney's Office recommends that the board authorize the County Attorney's Office to file the necessary paperwork to become an intervener. Additionally, the County Attorney's Office recommends that the board authorize the County Attorney's Office to work with our outside counsel, Mr. Self, if the need arises. And finally, since the hearing has been moved to October 9th and 10th, simply recommend that the board cancel the October 9th meeting, thus that commissioners and other staff would be able to attend the PSC hearing without conflict with a board meeting. I will note with that request that there are already 4 meetings that have been scheduled for October 2nd, 9th, 16th, and 23rd. So if the board does decide to cancel the October 9th meeting, there will still be 3 meetings in October, so plenty of opportunity for public input and to get the board to be able to approve items as necessary. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair for any questions or comments, and certainly if there are any one from the public as well.
Thank you. Any questions of Dylan? Commissioner Zork, I apologize. I probably should have asked if you wanted to move your item up to coincide with this. Did you want to go ahead and do your portion now, or you just wait for commissioner items?
Oh, we'll wait. That's
Okay,
fine.
that's fine. My apologies for not catching that earlier.
No problem.
Anyone from the public wish to comment on this item? So Dylan, just if we do become an intervener, it gives us the right to ask for discovery of the other parties, but in turn, they could ask the county of questions under discovery. Is that correct?
That is correct, and we would be subject to all the timelines set forth within the parameters of the order issued by the PSC. So I will say that there's an issue identification meeting, which is supposed to happen by August 27th. Discovery deadline is October 2nd. There's a pre-hearing conference, which is mandatory, which is October 3rd. So there are various different deadlines that we would be subject to, and definitely we could be seeking discovery, but also then having discovery submitted to the county.
And then if we vote to go ahead and move forward with the intervene, will you file that right away, or are you going to wait and be dependent upon other circumstances?
You know, I'm gonna coordinate with both the town and the city, and also with FPL. So I certainly want the latitude to kind of figure out what's the best way to us to get involved.
Okay, so basically you're asking us to give approval to file as an intervener, depending upon your determination of when or if we should.
We definitely would file, but when, I think, would be the issue.
Okay, all right, very good. I don't have anything else, commissioners. Anybody else? Okay, your pleasure.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Zork, second by Commissioner Adams, and that motion does include the canceling of the October 9th regular board meeting. Is that correct?
Of course.
Okay, and I believe I will be up in Tallahassee for that. I believe Commissioner Zork will probably be up there. I think Commissioner Fleury, I don't know, Commissioner Fletcher, Commissioner Fletcher, and wanna-
Are we gonna like?
we're all gonna go up,
together,
we're all
like
gonna
a
go up in
bonding
Commissioner
experience?
Fleury's new car, yeah.
Sweet, then sign me up.
Okay, we're good. So, motion by Commissioner Zork, second by Commissioner Adams. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Dylan.
And thank you very much for all those votes.
Moving on to Commissioner matters, the first one up is Vice Chairman Commissioner Bob Solari, FDEP Resilience Planning Grant. Commissioner Solari, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. FDEP now has a Florida Resilient Coastlines Program and a grants that go with it. The first grant applications are due, I think, about September 9th. And looking at the grant, it looks like it may be something that the county could use, but the timing of it doesn't quite work. Even before I could find out everything about the grant, I had to put it on this week's agenda because of the application deadline of September 9th. But looking through the grant application itself and realizing after talks with the county administrator that given the RFQ and the CC&A process, I don't think we really have time to make this year's cycle. I just wanted to make the commissioners aware of the grant because I think it might be something we might want to apply for next year. But I would like to see if it's anticipated that we might, and this would basically, again, try to anticipate some of the problems which might come with some sea level rise. If we could ask the county administrator if he could get with the appropriate departments and try to see what they would want in a planning document if we were to anticipate, say, a 1-foot rise in sea level. I mean, departments that come to mind would be that would be impacted would be public works, utilities, conservation lands, community development. One thing I'd like to do sooner rather, or have the county do sooner rather than later, is say if it's clear that there might be some impacts dealing with sea level rise which would impact the citizens, then let them know about it now and not 15 years from now after another 15 or 20,000 homes have been built in Indian River County. So we basically, plan for something bad to happen. Hopefully nothing will happen, but if it does, we will at least be able to mitigate some of the damages. So basically at this time, all I'm asking for is a consensus to basically have the county administrator think ahead to what we might want to do with it if we want to apply for a grant in the next cycle.
Thank you, Commissioner. And two things I just comment on and add is one is I think we do need to have some type of plan because at the last June at the Florida Association of Counties annual conference, they had a workshop on resiliency planning and such. And it's getting to the point now where the bond market underwriters are now looking at communities as evaluating their rating, if they're going to issue a general obligation bond or any other bond is, well, 30 years from now you might be underwater, so how are you going to pay that bond off? And so the markets are now really looking at this. So I think it's good that we do move forward and develop a plan so that we can, if ever asked, we can document to the markets that yes, we are making plans for this and we're dealing with it. And then secondly, I would just add that we asked staff to coordinate with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council because sometimes there are federal grants that come down that they have access to that may be on a different cycle than the state DEP. And we might want to just make sure that we are looking at those to see if they would be appropriate for us, but that could be another opportunity as well. So I just...
And they actually ought to also talk to FEMA too, because I've read somewhere that FEMA is going to start requiring some planning for this type of event. And so we might as well try to figure out what the bond market, what FEMA, but more practically, how our citizens would be impacted by this now. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments from commissioners? So I guess Jason just, Commissioner Solari is just asking that you all keep your eyes peeled for any opportunities. I think if nothing else, we want to shoot for next year's grant cycle.
I think so, but I think we need to prepare for it, over the course of the year, and so that we can put together the strongest package, which will have the greatest benefit to the citizens possible.
So, Good with that, Jason?
Yes, yes, we've gotten adequate direction. We'll work towards that.
Absolutely great. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Slurry. Next is Commissioner Susan Adams, continuing discussions regarding the Indian River Lagoon Master Plan. Commissioner Adams, you have the floor.
Thank you, thank you. This is a follow-up to our discussions in June related to the Indian River Lagoon Management Plan or Master Plan. At that time, we discussed hiring somebody to be in charge of kind of creating that plan, but currently it's kind of unclear how comprehensive that plan needs to be. It's going to have to cover multiple departments, multiple agencies, and probably be a little bit more involved on the front end. So that being said, we currently approved in April a contract with Tetra Tech for professional services. They are also the consultants that worked on the CCMP and the Brevard County plan. So I would like to see if we can go ahead and, since they're already under contract with us, get them to start an initial outline of what this plan should look like, working with staff and the multiple departments and different agencies. We have the BMAP requirements. We have some other requirements from DEP that they're looking at, and go ahead and jumpstart this process so we can get a better understanding of what we would need for job description and scope of work and where that new person would reside and that type of thing. But if we can go ahead and get this started, I feel like it will give us a better footing going into the legislative session for funding and other things as well. So I believe the estimates to have something like this done is probably going to cost us about $15,000. So that would be my request, if we could go ahead and get that started so we can start working on that plan as quickly as possible.
Okay, is that a motion?
Yes.
And 15,000?
Yes.
We have a motion from Commissioner Adams, seconded by Commissioner Slurry, to contract with Tetra Tech to begin initial outline of the scope of the master plan, with funding up to 15,000. And I would just suggest, Commissioner Adams, if it comes back a little higher than that, you just bring it back to us, and we will certainly adjust the dollar amount to fit what you need, but we'll start with the 15,000 if that's okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. And Jason, where would you anticipate the funds would come from?
We could fund these from our stormwater dollars. I think we can locate dollars from within the budget, and I think it's likely we can find the funds within the budget. And one of the things I want to mention is last week when we were having our legislative meetings, we had heard from our legislative folks that it's good to have, if we're going to be submitting projects for state funding, they like to see something as part of a larger initiative rather than, hey, here's a project. There's a comprehensive look, and I think this could serve as that.
Very good. And then I know that in our workshop, we approved the additional position for the lagoon coordinator person, and what do you want to call it? And we'll start searching for that on October 1. Is that correct, when the new budget goes in effect?
That's correct.
And I assume we'll approve it in September at the budget hearings. Okay. Commissioner Slurry, do you have a comment?
asked my question, thank you.
Oh, okay, very good. Motion by Commissioner Adams, second by Commissioner Slurry. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams, for staying on top of that. We move to Commissioner Tim Zork, an update on information related to the Public Service Commission hearings in Tallahassee on sale of Vero Beach Electric. Commissioner Zork, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some of the items, the date-specific items we had covered under the previous discussion. Two things I'd like to make mention of. One, there's a grassroots-driven petition effort that's going on that I'd like to see if we could possibly provide a link to the petition on our website if it meets the following criteria. Again, this is a grassroots petition effort that was launched by some folks that were very active at securing signatures at the two public open houses that FP&L held. I believe they've passed the 1,000 signature mark, or if not, are very close to surpassing that. And the more I think the more people that sign the petition in favor of continuing and moving this sale in the forward direction is, kind of the more the merrier on the petition side. So question one is, what, just as a motion or consensus to have that link? And I know, Dylan, did you look at that link and see the language? Is there anything in the petition that creates any hardship or problems with you from a legal side if we provided a link to an outside originating petition?
No, I think we're fine with the link. I just want to make sure that we obviously keep them in the limit of stuff that they have linking through our website so that they don't become a public entity.
Oh, correct.
Or some other document. They're separate, whatever private group they are, but if we certainly just want to link to them, that's fine.
Okay. So when seeking permission for providing that link up until the hearing date to secure more, or just making the public more aware of that petition is out there and they can sign if they feel in support of.
Right, I think, I think we're fine having it on there, and just say, for education, please go read
Right.
this. I think we can't urge
correct.
them to vote one way or the other kind of
It's
thing.
an informational link, and if
Informational
they
only,
read it.
yeah,
and-
yeah. So I'm fine with that, Commissioner.
So whatever disclaimer we need to attach with
Okay.
that.
Okay. Commissioner Fleischer?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Adams? Okay, so, yeah, that you have consensus to put that on?
Okay. And secondly, there's also a group working on some transportation options. This, again, is not a county-driven, no county funds. Once it becomes available, we may help get the word out, or at least share that there's maybe more than one transportation option, whether it's bus or plane charter. And again, that will be a grassroots-driven initiative by these folks that are trying to get folks to turn out. I think having that hearing room packed and overflowing to capacity sends a clear message of the folks back home. Obviously, they will know they will likely not have a potential opportunity to speak. They may not. We don't know at this particular time. But I think showing up as when we have items of important public interest to hear, and this room is filled with folks that they let us know that it's important to the community, and we would like all the public service commissioners, Public Service Commission members to know how important this issue is to us at home. So we'll see what comes about on these transportation options. Again, no county funds will be used in providing this form of transportation.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Zork. Moving on now to special districts and boards. First is the Emergency Services District, approval of the minutes of June 12 and June 19. So moved. I'll second that. Motion by Commissioner Slurry, second by myself. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes 5-0. Item number 3 is affiliation agreement between Fire Response Training Group and Indian River County Emergency Services District. Our Fire Chief, Mr. Tad Stone, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. Items 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all affiliation agreements with existing providers or ones that we want to try to do business with. The last one being Orlando Medical Institute. They're going to be providing a paramedic program in-house. We taught at Station 3, no county funds used to bring them in, but this gives them the opportunity to have the students come in and ride, get their lead times in and those types of things. And all those agreements are basically the same.
Great. Commissioners, do we want to take items 3, 4, 5, and 6 under one motion?
So moved.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Adams, for special or emergency service district items 3, 4, 5, and 6. Is there anyone from the audience that wishes to comment on the motion before us? Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Chief.
Don't go too far.
Bob Johnson, Carlin Subdivision. The new emergency preparedness gentleman's doing a great job. Anyway, my concern is that in the hospitals getting ready to change over to a new system, new vendor, but our emergency vehicles interface with the hospital through radios and things like that. So I'm always asking that make sure that whatever happens, that we're compatible with whatever the hospital comes up, and then the question comes up as to who pays for these changes if they're going to be made to our medical vehicles. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Yeah, Tad, if you wouldn't mind just addressing that?
Yes, sir. There's actually, our ability to communicate with the hospital will not change at all. We've already gone down that road to make sure that we're completely compatible with whatever comes in. There's also a state communications plan that's required for us to mandate for all EMS units, and the hospitals are all part of that also. So we're in good shape.
Okay. So we should be in good shape, Mr. Johnson. Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Zork?
While Chief Stone's still here for 1 second, again, following up on the Cleveland Clinic changeover, our current contract for the medical director of the program, do we contract with him independently or through the hospital?
He's independent.
Independent, okay, so that agreement can stay on?
Yes, sir.
I would
No
think
change in that
afterward.
either.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Okay. We now move to the Solid Waste Disposal District. We have the minutes of the meeting of June 5th and July 3rd.
Approval.
I'll give the motion to Commissioner Slurry, second by Commissioner Flesher. Anyone from the public wish to comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye. Aye. That motion carries 5-0. Approval, item 3, approval of the 2018 CPI adjustment request by Waste Management.
Move approval of the CPI adjustment for waste management.
We have a motion by Commissioner Slurry, second by Commissioner Adams. Anyone from the public wish to comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Item 4, approval of an interlocal agreement and a memorandum of understanding with the town of Indian River Shores for recycling services.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Slurry. Just under discussion, the only, basically, for the public, we're going to be refunding some of the recycling fee that's part of your normal property tax bill under the Solid Waste Disposal District assessment, because the town of Indian River Shores handles their own recycling collection. My only concern here, and I don't know if Vinny or Himanshu just address it, historically, I don't believe that Indian River Shores has been real strong in the recycling program. And how can we make sure that they're maximizing the amount of recycling? If we're going to give them this credit for it, can we monitor the tonnage they bring in? Can we, look at some of their garbage loads and make sure there's not a lot of recycling material in there? It's fairly significant amount of money, and I'd just like to make sure that they are recycling if this is what we're giving them the money back for.
Vincent Berg, Director of Utility Services. I have Himanshu next to me in case I don't get this answer correct. But I think we have two ways to do that. One is the short term, where we can look at the Republic trucks if the Republic is given the go-ahead. Right now, I believe the town is considering the submittals in their next meeting, which is a week from Thursday, the 23rd of August. Right now, Republic Services appears to be the front runner, but that's still up for discussion. So if Republic Services is chosen for the town's recycling collection, we can start looking at the material coming into our collection facility, the MRF down at the landfill. What we also could do is what we did in 2015 is do a recycling composition study. That's certainly a little bit more long-term, but that's an option to look at where recycling is happening throughout the county at all the different municipalities, including but not limited to the shores. So we could right now just look at the tonnages, look at what Waste Management is bringing in for the unincorporated part of the county, but also to look at what's coming in from Public Services to try to see if there's a check and balance. We can do that right now with the scales whenever the town decides to move with that hauler.
Okay. Now, I imagine in the shores, I think their population, the majority of it's fairly seasonal. Probably this time of year, we won't expect to see a whole lot of tonnage, but certainly November, December, January, February, March, we should see some significant numbers.
Himanshu Mehta, Solid Waste Disposal District. I agree with Vinny, we can certainly track on the scales, but one of the, I think, a positive impact of kind of negotiating this ILA and getting this updated is we're looking at providing them the single-stream recycling carts. So every resident there single-family resident will get the blue cart that we have throughout the rest of the county. I think that's going to be a significant step forward in getting them to participate. The residents, a lot of them still were using the blue bins, and so I think that this will get them caught up. All of our education efforts and whatnot will be now consistent throughout the county, including the shores. So I think that's going to be a positive step as well in increasing the numbers.
Very good. Thank you both. Commissioner Solari.
You made an excellent point, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to ask the county attorney if there's, in the agreement, can we put a simple paragraph that says that, this agreement notwithstanding, the shores are still responsible for meeting the recycling mandate or cooperating to meet the recycling mandate that Indian River County has faced, and that if it's determined by the Solid Waste Department that they're not taking the proper steps, that we can rescind the agreement, something like that? It gives us some teeth in the idea that they have to pay attention to recycling.
Well, I guess one of the provisions I thought was important was, and this is something that Himanshu and Vinny and Jason were adamant about, was that they were going to be, the town was going to be providing the recycling services consistent in the same manner which the unincorporated areas were. So
But that we can withdraw from the agreement if.
And
without
sorry, I'm just pulling up the withdrawal.
And
And
the
the
one thing to get the recycling bins, it's another thing to have the citizens actually accept them and then do whatever they have to do to make sure that they're actually used.
In the recitals, I'll say, whereas the town is committed to continuing to develop programs and infrastructure to assisting Indian River County in reaching the 75% recycling goal.
But what happens if they don't? I mean, do we have any, my point is, can we put some teeth into it without too much of a problem? Or if you feel that they do it, I just don't want to be left out.
And to that point, I think what staff in the county attorney's office has actually been concerned about is not necessarily kicking out the town of Indian River Shores. I think what we were really looking for in this deal was a long-term commitment for them to be a part of this program. So for us, I think we were more focused on not having an ILA like we had before, which was simply a 60 or 90-day notice and boom, they were gone and they were off. We were really committed to having this hard 20 years that they were going to be with us for the long haul. So honestly, I just wanted you to be aware that that was more of our concern, was them leaving and saying, that's it, we're done with recycling, we don't care, versus no, you're going to be a part of this program and you're going to be providing those recycling services on the long term in the same manner that we do. But if it's the board's will to...
Want to make sure that we can make sure that they're doing what the county's doing, basically. And if the staff feels that they're in position to accept what the shores will do as sufficient, that's fine. But I just don't want us to realize, wake up in 2 or 3 years that we do a waste composition study and it turns out that the recycling isn't particularly spiffy, but there's nothing we can do for 20 years.
And the same could be said for an area of unincorporated Indian River County. We would have the same issue.
No, but we have responsibility for it, so we can do what we need to do. We've got an ability to step in and make sure that things are getting done, whereas we don't in the town of Indian River Shores because that's another local government. That's the difference. To me, that's all the difference in the world.
I see that point.
And Commissioner Solari, that was, when I talked to Jason about this yesterday, I was trying to think what we could do, like, if you, like a sliding scale, if they bring in 2 tons of recyclables a month, then we'll pay them $1, and then, there's a performance-based kind of thing.
Well, if they don't, say, if they're not recycling a lot, that means if we do a waste composition study, we're going to find a lot of the stuff in the normal garbage truck.
Right.
Which that means that we may need to do something to separate the recycling goods at that point, if we can, which means that we'll have the added expense. So the point of being able to not continue with the rebate to the shores allows us to have funds to meet that added expense. That was my thought, but.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Zork.
The town of Indian River Shores is kind of a special, unique place. If we didn't have the millings and the C&D operations that we've been able to count, we wouldn't be where we are, and they don't have that opportunity. So we can't hold them to a similar standard when how we've been able to really increase our numbers is by collecting data on other operations that the town of Indian River Shores would rarely ever have access to, other than milling of A1A once every 20 years.
We're not
So-
holding them to anything like that.
No.
We can separate totally the commercial from the residential. And I think that's the proper playing field, is the residential. And so all I'm suggesting is to make sure that they're moving towards the same residential standards that the county is. And that's all I'm saying.
Well, and I think that one paragraph that where we have establishes a recycling goal, we're all trying to get there. Knowing the uniqueness of their community, I'm not saying that I don't expect less of them. I just saying they're here for a weekend, they're here for a month or two, and to try to average out, and are they meeting the goals through a one-shot composition grab when it's Thanksgiving weekend? I just don't think it's a good way to look at it. I think we can, if we want to look at what's their tonnages on an annual basis, and maybe if we did a composition study, say, look, here's what we found, but I don't want to handcuff them, and I don't think you're really going
No,
that
I'm not.
far, but-
An easy way to do it is to just have something in the agreement, which, if there's a recycler, then the recycler is going to have tonnage that he brings in.
Right.
And we have an idea of what the tonnage of recycling we do in. A simple calculation of how much that is per household gives us some place to start. And I'm not trying to get any exact number or anything like that, but you can sometimes tell that very little is being done as opposed to some efforts being done. And that's the only thing I'm saying. If it doesn't bother the rest of the board, that's fine. But the point is that if we're going to move forward and keep pressure on this, there's no big single thing that we can get. I tend to think that we have 20 or 25 different little recycling areas, and we need to keep pressure on as many of those as possible if we're going to basically do the best we can to recycle. Because for instance, I mean, what I was talking about this week with some people is composting. I mean, there are a lot of areas where you could actually compost and take some stuff from the landfill, but I guarantee there's not one person on Johns Island composting, and I don't expect they would. So I'm good with that. I understand that. Same thing with any HOA or any apartment building or any condominium. I'm not expecting them to compost, so I'm not trying to,
Right.
But there's a big difference between, just behaving rationally and not doing anything. That's
right. And the other part with that is our county residents tend to be year-round. Their residents are intermittent or a few days, sometimes out of a year. And how would you adjust if they're participating at an appropriate level when we don't know their occupancy?
It's self-correcting if you're doing it basically on maybe not on volume. I think there are ways, but again, I'll be happy to just let it go now. But the idea that there aren't metrics for almost anything you can do is a silly thing, I think, in today's world. And to let that stop you, I just think is a silly thing to let stop you.
Dylan, could we just put like a reopener in here for like 2 years from now? Or a review or a reopener or something?
And just something I was quickly doing, I was wondering if it was something more appropriate for a discussion in the MOU versus the overall arching ILA, some sort of performance standards or analysis, or.
And it may be, we're, in the MOU and the ILA, they both contemplate that the town will participate in our next rebid for our curbside recycling services. Maybe that's the point where we put something in there that say.
How long ago is that? How far out is that?
2022 is when the current.
That's fine. Happy with that. And just ask staff then, I'll just ask you to have staff just to pay some attention to that, to get some sense of how it's going.
Okay, we good? We have a motion by Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Slaring. Anyone from the public wish to comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. That concludes the agenda. Commissioners, anything else for the good of the public? Seeing none, we're adjourned.